Warm welcome to all the participants. Today we are going to discuss about a very pertinent topic, which is about sustainability. Now, how we are going to achieve this sustainability, we have to see that our generations which are yet to come could see the world as we are seeing today, or even better than today. For that, we will have to make efforts from right now. And there are a lot of efforts already going on for the green buildings, new constructions which are being planned. There are a lot of developments which are being taken place for sustainability and resilience. My today's discussion is more inclined towards the existing built environment. So we would be today talking about the existing built environment more, and we will see how we can connect this to our approach to the sustainability. So I take my presentation along, and then we will have some polls also within this presentation. I would like all of you to participate genuinely, because this discussion is not just for sake of discussion, but this is an effort to make an impact within the society and this planet. And I thank Ultratech Cement for giving me the opportunity to talk on this subject. And let us discuss a few things which we will be having a lot of thinking. I should request all of you to keep the questions which come to your mind, and you can post it through the box so that we can take these questions at the end of this discussion. So please do participate with your genuine thinking and participation. Now on the screen you can see a few photographs which we have selected to show you that the built environment, what we see, is not exactly the same what we are seeing after the finishing. Most of us are sitting in our office or residences or some other places which are cladded or finished with certain things through which we cannot see the exact condition of the structure. These photographs can take you to some of you to your memories of some basements if you are visiting some stilt areas of your residential buildings, or maybe some other places where the cladding or the finishing is not covering the actual condition of the structural area. You can see some buildings which have these kind of wider cracks near the even room walls or your openings, or maybe some areas which are exposed to the environment, some balconies, sajjas, your parapet walls, and some other aspects. You can also see these photographs which will probably would keep you aware about the corrosion condition of the buildings. A lot of buildings have exposed reinforcement which is corroding fastly, and thus making the buildings vulnerable for the accidents. Because if your reinforcement steel gets corroded, your load carrying capacity of the steel structural or these RCC members goes down gradually. And once this reinforcement is not taken care properly, the rate of corrosion will increase with time. If the dampness and the atmospheric air is easily available to these reinforcement steel bars, the deterioration, the corrosion accelerates at a log scale level, which is very, very fast with time, and the expected life of the structure can go very sharply down. So these are the photographs which can help you with this understanding that this kind of situations you may have to face time to time. So with this, now I would like to start our first poll to get your thinking about it, and I would request the organizers to take the first poll now. So poll is on, and I would request everybody to please give your honest participation in that, so that we get to know how you react about it. It is about when you notice the cracks and seepages or falling plaster or rusting of reinforcement, what do? You ignore them, number one. Number two, you get the surface repair or painted by a local mason, something like that, or you consult an architect for the assessment or repairs, or you consult the structural consultants or structural auditors for the assessment and follow the recommendations given by the structural engineer. Yes, very good. I am seeing a lot of progress is there. Almost 25% have already voted. We can wait for another few seconds. Polling is progressing. Almost 40% of the participants have. Okay, now the poll has ended. Almost 40% of you have voted, and I am happy to see that a lot of participants have acknowledged that the structural consultant should be reached out if you see these structural issues. So moving ahead, why structural safety audits are required? Before we proceed further, I would like to show you one screen, which is, I do not know if this video can, yeah, we can play this video.
अंदर है तो नहीं कोई इसमें.
This is a video of a collapse of a building. So this was the video of a collapse of a building in Chandigarh last year, and which has taken a lot of concerns, a lot of damages were there, and this triggers the structural engineering, that how we can save such kind of buildings. So the factors of the failure were probably because this was an old building and structural audits were not carried out. People were not aware about the structural condition of the building. It was only the guess. Some people maybe before the collapse, some people will be thinking that this building can live another 30-40 years, and some people might be thinking 10-15 years, but the building collapsed without giving much warning. So unauthorized hazardous renovations were taken up and some slabs were removed. Technical oversight during these structural interventions were there, and because of the ignorance and hiding of the minor issues, accelerated deteriorations due to lack of timely maintenance, we could see the completion of the life of this building abruptly. So a lot of other things you might have seen in the televisions or some other news. The collapse of the building in Surat, and maybe another building, 18-story residential building, 6th floor level, first floor pancake down, killing 2 residents. So a lot of other buildings which are under consideration. Probably you might have heard about Chintal Paradiso project of Gurgaon, in which there was a collapse, and now after the structural audit, all the buildings of that project have been rendered to be unsafe, and these all will be demolished. Now you think about that, the building, this Chintal Paradiso project was constructed around 10 to 15 years back. Each flat was costing more than a few crores, and still people were unsafe in those residential building towers, and the building life is hardly 15 years. So if we will be having such kind of conditions or the buildings or the structures, then how we would be seeing our planet to be a sustainable planet? You all know that a lot of materials which are used in the construction are highly energy consuming materials. Not only the initial cost of construction or the initial energy abandonment, there are a lot of other areas where the energy goes into the building, and if we have to demolish it and then reconstruct it in a very early age of the building, it means we are wasting a lot of energy and we are polluting the planet highly. So first of the major challenges is severe corrosion, and if we are not taking it timely, if we are not addressing it quickly, then the rate of corrosion accelerates at a very faster pace, and the life of the building goes down at a very sharp pace. So here there is a small statistics showing recent building collapses, wherein if we see in this slide, almost very early age of the buildings have collapsed, and many people have died or injured. And this is a scenario, though it is a very selective list, but if you see in your area also, you would see such kind of conditions. It is not only in India. Now this scenario, global scenario, is also like that. In United States, more than 50% buildings are having aged more than 45 years. Similarly, in United Kingdom, 79% of the buildings are more than 25 years. So these developed countries which have developed a lot of built environment long back, all these buildings are now facing the problem of completing their serviceable life. Now the audit requirement is everywhere. So India, which triggered their development in 1990s, so we see a lot of development came up in last 30-35 years. And if we are not able to save them now, if we are not able to maintain them so that they can live long, this scenario will be very difficult for our development. If we are seeing the developed nation tag by another 10-15 years, we will have to save our existing built environment. This was the status of the building, and you see the bridges also are in the same line. Many of the bridges in all over the world, they need structural proper repair, they need proper structural assessment, and for the structural assessment, a detailed structural audit is required. So again, now coming to the second poll, I would request organization to start the second poll, please. So have you ever checked whether the building where you live or work has undergone a structural safety audit by a competent structural consultant or structural auditor? You can start voting now, please. Okay, now the poll has ended and I see a great response distributed over the three options. And those who are not sure, I'm getting the feeling that they will now get it checked through their systems, or if they are in the society, through their society, and if they are the owner, they can themselves get it checked. And yes, of course, I'm around 50% people have voted that they know that their building has been or is being monitored, structural audits are being done, and they are living in a safe place. So I would just like to bring some information about the structural safety audits. What is structural audit? That is to be understood by all of us. So important aspect is the safety. When we talk about structural audit, just like your banking accounts or some other chartered accounts audits, they see the correctness of the accounting system. In our case, when we talk about the structural audits is about looking for the adequacy of the structural elements and the safety aspects. So what is all about the structural audit is to have safety for our buildings. It first see that what are the defects, deteriorations or damages in the structural elements. Now these are three different terms. Generally people do not distinguish between the defects, deterioration and damages, but I must explain in few words that is the defect is something which is something inappropriately done in the building when it was constructed. Like it is basically like a manufacturing defect. Deterioration is now at the time of taking over the building, probably all the defects were removed and the building, but over the time there were some like penetration of moisture or some kind of corrosion activities takes place, or some other deteriorations are going on because of some weeds or other things. So deterioration also affects the strength of the structural elements. So that is also to be monitored with time. And then there may be some damages. Now damages come from some incidents like an earthquake or a windstorm or a very heavy rain downpour or a flood or landslide, or maybe any kind of situation which is not conducive, and that can damage our existing built environment. So defects could be initial problems, then deterioration are time dependent, loss of strength or loss of capacities of the structural elements, and damages could be due to some incident or accidents. Now perverting the collapse and failures due to errors in design, execution and usage. It is not that all the buildings are designed perfectly, executed perfectly and are being used as per the design. There may be some problems in the design time errors also. The architects or the structural engineers may have done something which is causing some problem. During execution also some errors might have come, and due to that also the structural capacities can go down. And during usage also sometimes what happens that a building was designed for some lesser load capacities, but later on you put extra loads than the design loads, and that can also cause collapse or damages to the building. Now there may be some other things like human error, natural disaster and severe weather which can affect the built environment. So to prevent unexpected structural failures which can lead to life safety risk, business downtime, legal consequences and reputational damage, we have to see that there are no failures and the structural auditors are taking appropriate actions, assessments, and we can then prevent the loss of capacities and can prevent the accidents. So in a sentence we can say that structural audits convert unknown risk into managed decisions. So we are now going to know what all are the elements which are requiring some interventions, and we can have proper decisions which can be taken to prevent the damages or the accidents of the buildings. So assessing the key structural aspects in the existing buildings, which will include stiffness distribution, load path distribution and seismic responses as per the requirement of the earthquake zones or seismic zones. So coming to the basic distribution, stiffness distribution aspect, because though it is a bit technical and maybe related to the civil and structural engineers, they will understand better. But in general terms, I can explain that just like our body can also feel some stiffness, like it is flexibility about the movement or resistance to deflection. So if a column is smaller, then it can deflect faster, and if the column size is larger, the deflection will be lesser. So it means larger size column has more stiffness, thin column has lesser stiffness. Similarly, bamboo has lesser stiffness, concrete column will have larger stiffness. So stiffness plays important role in controlling the deformations of the buildings. So when we see any building or any other structural element or any built environment or any infrastructure project, the load is one thing which is distributed vertically, and stiffness also plays when there is a deformation. Just like if there is small motion in the ground of earthquake, or there is a strong wind which is causing a deformation in the building, then the stiffness distribution within the system, within the building or within the built environment, that plays important role. If this distribution of the stiffness is not well designed, then some portion may deform less, some portion may deform more, and there may be a lot of torsion, there may be a lot of unbalanced distribution of the forces, and that can lead to the damages to the buildings. So the structural auditor understands the situations, and first the approach is to understand the stiffness distribution within the system. Then next is the important aspect is the load path and the load distribution. Generally, we all understand that we have structural slabs or floors which take the load. Just like we are sitting on a floor, this floor is a RCC slab. Now this RCC slab will take the load to the nearest beam, or as per the load path, it will go to the beam system. Then from beam system, the load will go to the column system. Column, it is going to the foundation, and from foundation, the load will go to the ground. And that is how from the system of the load of the upper floors, the load gets distributed in the ground. Now, if there is a column missing in between, then the load path gets disturbed, and now because of the one column is missing or the load path is not correct, the load will have to go left or right near to the nearest other column, and in this process there may be some excessive deformations or torsion or some cracks, and from that perspective also the nearest other column will have excessive loads. So if we have removed one column from the system, it will create the nearby columns the additional loads, as well as the structural arrangement is going to be having a lot of deformations and excessive stresses. The seismic response is again a very important aspect which a structural auditor checks when they do the audit. There are a lot of areas where the systems are not proper. The diaphragm action is not proper. Somewhere we have larger openings and some areas, and due to that the horizontal load path is not very well defined, and the structure can have a lot of damages due to lateral displacement caused by the earthquake. So all these aspects are important to be undertaken by the structural auditor. And with the structural audit, if it is the existing structural system, we can consider that whether it is compromising the safety or we are in a safer structure. So predicting and extending the building's safe service life, we have a lot of testing methods. So identification of active deterioration mechanism is the first aspect we check. Then assessment of the residual structural capacity, whether we have sufficient residual capacity or we are having deficiency in that. If we are having some deficiencies, then we will have to strengthen it. We will require interventions. Now forecasting the rate of deterioration is also aspect of the structural audit. We have a lot of testing systems which can tell you even the rate of corrosion, like how many millimeters per year is the rate of corrosion going on. And with that, we can predict how much is the life left, which we can consider as the safe service life if we are not going for any proper structural intervention. Then based on all these kind of information, we can plan for the future replacements, maintenance, optimization, efficient resource allocation, and we can increase the return on investment so that we get the maximum value of the money spent. The verification of compliances is very important. All the building safety requirements have to be met, and with the help of structural audits, we can do these compliances requirements, which are actually the commitment of the owners at the time of taking the permit of the construction. Once the permit is given, at the time of completion, we have to show that everything is as per the permission. And even after the occupancy is received, with the time you require some structural audits for the compliances that our building is safe. In many states, the guidance is being given that every 3 to 5 years, or maybe every 5 years, after a life of 10 years of the building, every 5 years there need to be a structural audit to verify that the building is safe for the habitation. Further, we need some kind of audit requirements when there is a change of occupancy, because when there is a change of occupancy, load compliances are violated, and the structural audits are required to verify whether the building or the structure is safe even with the change of occupancy. Change of occupancy, we can consider that a residential building can become commercial building can become warehouse, or a warehouse can become industrial. So all these kind of changes can happen within the built environment, and for that structural audit is required before you undertake any change of occupancy. Sometimes people require some removal of walls or supports. Supports means some column, some load-bearing column, some non-load-bearing column, or maybe some other things which people do not know whether it is safe to remove these walls or columns or not. With the help of structural audits, the system is checked and the compliance is checked that there is no violation of the safety. Now, corrosion of reinforcement is also important aspect, as we already discussed. Corrosion reduces the structural load carrying capacity in a faster way, and the durability is getting affected. So with this help of the structural audits, we can assure that the systems are fine. And if there is a problem of the corrosion, then how to deal with that situation to have durability compliance. Now, fire exposure also sometimes trigger the requirement of structural audits, because if the fire exposure is there, though initially it seems like nothing has happened, but if the high temperature exposure is there for the structural elements, there may be damage to the concrete elements and the inside reinforcement also. So with the help of the structural audits, we can come to know that whether there is any damage or everything is fine, and if there is a damage or if there is any requirement of strengthening, that can be taken up, and that is how we comply to the requirements of the strength. Now, generally, normally people consider that the age of a building should be 50 to 60 years. Now, if the building is having already lived there its design life, suppose a building is 60-year-old. Now, if we have to decide whether this building is still habitable or you need some intervention or you need to demolish it. Now, to take a decision about it, you require the structural audit so that there is no sudden failure or something should not happen without knowing. So everything should be planned and you can take a proper decision. Now, another thing which is sometimes triggering the requirement of the structural audit, which is the revision in the codal provisions. As we get more understanding about the structural system, environment, and other things, the design codes and the safety codes keep on improving. If we see the earthquake safety codes of 30-40 years old, the requirements were very simple. But after the Bhuj earthquake, a lot of information we gathered, and seeing the international understanding and the condition of India with respect to the risks of the earthquakes, the standard of the earthquake safety was revised in 2002. And that is when the authorities also started using this earthquake code as a mandatory requirement for the earthquake safety. Since 2002, the code has been revised in 2016, and probably another revision will come very soon. So all these safety requirements may keep your requirements a bit on a higher side, like we need better safety, and the requirements may be more than the earlier ones. So if this building was built with a standard of 2002 code, and if we want it to be safe as per the latest standard requirements, then there may be requirements of some interventions, and that interventions can be designed or can be decided based on the structural audits. Then, as I already told, there may be some frequency of the structural audits as per the statutory requirements. Every 5 years, my personal thinking is that every 5 years, at least a basic structural audit is required, even if you see everything is fine, because what a structural engineer would see into the building is not the same as you are seeing, because you may not be probably seeing the micro cracks which are developing. Some micro cracks or some hairline cracks may be very, very serious. These are the shear cracks indications. You need immediate interventions. If the corrosion signs are visible, then timely action will save a lot of money later on. Because if you are ignoring the initial level of corrosion, then in few years you may see very big cracks, and then the intervention requirements will require a lot of money. So if at appropriate time you take decisions, then you save a lot of money. So structural audits, if taken frequently, timely, these can save a lot of money, and not only money, actually, if we see from the energy point of view, from the sustainability point of view, it will reduce the requirement of a lot of energies, because the initial stages requirement may be very, very small, and then later on it may require a lot of materials and energies which may not be sustainable. Now, coming forward, we will be discussing about one small more slide that what structural audit is not about. Many a times what we see is that people say that we have got the structural audit done, but actually it is just a visit, walking through the building and clicking some photographs and submitting the report with the recommendations of the repair strengthening is not the outcome of an audit. This is a very, very serious issue at this moment, what we are all seeing. Some people just with the help of their visual survey certify that building is safe, unsafe, or what all is required for the strengthening or the repairs. Now, it is not a correct way of looking at the building safety, and through this presentation I would like to tell all of you that this is just an eyewash and we should not go with this. Sometimes what happens that people approach to the testing agencies, and these testing agencies do some kind of testing, and they, with the just help of some testing of the concrete, they tell you that building is safe or unsafe. Now, if the concrete strength is 30 MPa or 40 MPa or 15 MPa or 20 MPa, your testing team can just work out this. Now, if the strength is something maybe X or maybe Y, how would you know that the structural capacity is meeting the requirement of your load capacities? If the building spans are different, and if the buildings, suppose your concrete strength is quite good, say maybe 30 MPa or maybe M30 grade it passes, but your reinforcement steel is less and your loads are very heavy, and the actual requirement of steel was X, but you have only 0.7X. It means that your structural capacity is less than the requirement. Then certifying just based on the testing is totally inappropriate. So nobody can tell whether the building is unsafe or safe just by doing some testing. Without analyzing, you cannot declare anything. Some people do some software-based analysis of the existing structure relying on the inputs available of the drawing. Now, they do not know the exact status of the structure. They would see if you have, though it is very unlikely that you have all the as-built drawings, but even if as-built structural drawings are available, just by analyzing with the help of as-built structural drawing is not enough, because at the time of construction there may be some errors, defects, and with time some deteriorations would have taken place, some deviations would be there, and maybe the concrete strength or the steel condition is not same as per the drawing. So that can also give you wrong indications. Sometimes people do certify based on conducting a checklist based on the compliance exercise and filling the standard format with yes or no, with general statements like major issues found or not. Even if some major issues are not visible, it doesn't mean that the building do not have any major issue. As I told you, there may be some shear cracks which are basically maintenance team has hidden, because sometimes what happens is that the maintenance team do a lot of repairs and painting work every year, and all these kind of indications which can tell you that building is safe or unsafe are hidden because of this regular painting and plastering. So the trouble may increase inside but is not visible from the face of this surface. So with the just seeing the surface, we cannot say that everything is fine. Or so all these surveys may be required for as a one part. This may become the part of the structural audit, but these are not conclusive. So the structural audit is a systematic documented engineering process which involves critical visual inspection, investigation and testing, condition assessment, structural evaluation, and then finally engineering judgment. And with the help of this, we can work out or decide on the structural safety, serviceability, durability, residual structural capacity, risks, and urgency of intervention. Because if everything is not fine, there may be requirement of some strengthening or intervention, and how much safe life is balanced for which you can use the structure, and after that probably you will have to demolish the building for the redevelopment. So the structural safety audit stages basically require critical visual inspection plus visual surveys, distress mapping, photography, samples on site measurements, investigation and testing would require exposure assessment plus selecting test locations based on critical visual inspection, non-destructive testing, laboratory testing. Then condition assessment will require a lot of correlation between the testing and the critical visual inspection. The present condition of structure is assessed by a competent structural engineer, and then based on that the structural evaluation is done for the interpretation of the assessed data, whatever is available, and a lot of computational analysis might be required, which will tell you what is the demand of the demand of the structure and the capacities. Demand may be like the structure require the capacity for 100 kilonewton load and your actual capacity may be 80 or 120. If it is higher capacity, then building is safe. If your capacity is less than the available demand, then your building may be unsafe. So based on that, all this assessment is done and engineering judgment is applied based on good engineering practices and competence of the engineer. And then proper evaluation report is given, and based on that, conclusions and some certifications can be taken. After this discussion now, I would like to request the organizers to go for the another poll. In this poll, the question is that do you think this long-term safety of a building is directly linked to sustainability? If we are able to save the buildings, would it lead to the structural safety as well as the sustainability? Yes, I would request the participants to please vote. Yes, good. Because we must understand from our heart, if we have sustainable requirements, then how important it is to have long-term life of the building. Okay, very good. So many of you have voted that yes, the structural safety or the structural audit or the long-term safety of the building is linked to the sustainability, and few people have voted for no, and probably they are not at this moment convinced that the structural safety could be giving better sustainability. Now you see the structural safety audits and sustainability aspect. If we see the global share of buildings and construction operational and process CO2 emissions in 2021, you see a lot of emissions are for the building construction industry materials, and 37% account for the buildings construction industry. So when we say sustainable infrastructure, what do we really mean? Is it about new green buildings or extending the life of what already exists? So this is the thought which what we have to give, and if we are able to save our existing buildings, then in my opinion, probably we are giving the green response to our planet. We are reaching towards the sustainable approach. Every infrastructure facility involves massive carbon, material and energy investments, and therefore every building we consider for rehabilitation is a step towards sustainability. So the last poll for this discussion today, there is an aspect that we want the transparency in the system, that the people should be able to take a response which is informed response, and we think that there should be a rating of the buildings, so that just similar to the hotel or other ratings, like for the sustainable green buildings rating, there are rating system. Do you think the building should also have a publicly visible structural rating to take informed decisions by the occupants? So the poll is in process. Please vote your share. Please share your vote, because to have informed decisions, do you think there should be publicly visible structural rating of the buildings? So many people have responded it positively, and with this discussion, I would like to mention that we are working towards this approach to bring more transparency, and maybe in near future you would see something like that which may come up in our industry, which would give better things or more transparency to take informed decisions. So this is now time for the questions.